Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ontario Cryptids. Fall is officially here. The air's getting crisp, the nights are longer, and it's the perfect time to settle in with some chilly encounter stories. Today, I've got 3 mysterious tales to share that's definitely going to make you think twice on your next walk through the woods. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell so you'll never miss another upload. Also, check out the new Hype feature. It's a great way to support the channel at no cost and help Ontario Cryptids climb the leaderboard. And if you'd like to take the next step further, consider becoming a channel member to unlock exclusive perks, weekly chats, and members-only content. And of course, if you had an encounter story of your own, we'd love to hear it. Just send your stories to ontariocryptids@gmail.com. Now sit back and relax, and let's get into this week's eerie encounter stories. I was mountain biking solo on the trails of a local state park sometime between 6 and 6:45 a.m. Riding my usual trails with my headphones on, I came out of the woods and on a power line trails. Immediately felt uncomfortable, like someone was watching me, hair up in the back of my neck. Very unfamiliar feeling. I removed my headphones and realized it was dead silent beyond my breath and the faint sound of my iPod playing. The trail is not far from a very busy road that connects to the interstate. I couldn't even hear an insect. Looked around and didn't see anything, as it is mostly woods and tall grass. The general impression I felt was not fear, more of a high alert. I got on my bike and took the trail in the opposite direction of the parking lot as fast as I could. I felt like I was being followed to my right behind a brush, which no person could walk through, but couldn't see anything. By the time I reached a pathway that the rangers use for access via their trucks, it was immediately like the pressure of being watched and followed vanished. I took the long way home and figured it was just some meth heads from the trailer park that bordered the power lines and didn't really think about it again. It wasn't until the past few years of listening to encounters and testimonies that I realized it was more likely I may have been followed by one of these creatures. Years later, my aunt was visiting from Chicago and drove down the road bordering this area and claimed to see a white Sasquatch at the edge of the woods. At the time, I wasn't much of a believer despite lifelong interest, and mostly shrugged it off, thinking it was too outrageous to believe. I learned this year that another person on another site of this woodland reported seeing a white Sasquatch next to a large sign, right around the same area my aunt had her sighting. Since moving back to the area at the beginning of this year, I decided to start hiking the trails where I used to mountain bike. The first time I went out, I went off the main trail to check out some fallen trees and saw what I eventually would be convinced is tree break. The break is twisted and the branch itself started right around the 7-foot mark. I took the photo while standing on a fallen tree next to it. The tree fell in the opposite direction of the break, which was around 2 feet in diameter, to help put the photo in perspective. Weeks later, I decided to explore the trails I was not familiar with, and it led me to the power lines right where they bordered the mobile homes. I started following the trails in the direction, and I knew I would circle back to the trails I was familiar with. Eventually, I saw on the ground what looked like a weird hoof prints, only the back side of the heel seemed to be deeper than towards the front and at a slight angle. They were in moderately firm, sandy soil with a sandy top layer. I followed them down to the trail, feeling like it must have been a horse. Rarely you'll pass someone on horseback out here, but the prints were only on one side of the trail and didn't fit a horse's pattern. Eventually, the prints took on a larger, fuller form and looked more like a foot. The soil was becoming more damp. At first, I didn't want to believe it was a footprint. My picture shows my size 10 shoes and a decent reference for spacing between steps. I had to stretch well beyond comfort just to match the distance between those steps. They seem to exhibit the classic mid-dorsal break features, though the photos aren't very good. The other prints were taken a week later on the other side of the power lines, same trail. I've noticed a couple of X-pattern logs on the wire borders along the road. Never thought I'd say this, but I'm confident that Sasquatch is in Tampa, Florida. I was standing about 10 feet down in the forest around a deep ravine, not really too far from the house, but it was right next to a patch of woods going back further south into the national forest. Leaves were on the ground, and that was the first thing that impinged on my consciousness, the sound of something walking through leaves. It was a measured long thread, I could tell. I started looking around, trying to see what was making those sounds. I was much braver back then. Then over at the other side of the ravine, close to the bottom, but definitely walking uphill, I saw it. For all about 3 seconds. It seemed like longer at the time, and about 50 to 100 yards away. It was very large, and I could see that it was hairy. I could see the ground between its moving legs and some vague image of arms, but not the head. Some forest branch obscured my view of the very top part of the body. I could tell it was walking upright uphill. It wasn't a bear. It was striding with purpose up the hill on the other side, and it was quickly out of sight. Now, I know I wasn't thinking clearly because I decided I had to try to get a better look. So I ran as quickly as I could around the rim of the ravine since its origins began in our front yard. Not the best playground, I can tell you. Anyway, it didn't take me long to reach the other side and move down into the woods slightly to look around and see if I could find it again. I did not see it again. I was there for only a minute or so when it suddenly occurred to me that I didn't hear anything anymore at all, no sound, no birds, nothing, and fear like I've never known before hit me, and I went running, practically screaming back to the house for Mother. I told her what I'd seen, and she, of course, did not believe me, although she told me to never tell anyone else the story. For a long time after that, I didn't tell anyone except family members, but they didn't believe me either. It didn't help that only 1 or 2 people since then truly believed that I saw a Bigfoot. Since then, I have lots of trouble going out alone in the woods. While no one actually calls you a liar, they look skeptical, and you can tell they either think you've been drinking, taking drugs, or you saw a bear. At about 10 a.m., while sitting in my deer stand on an absolutely gorgeous morning, I heard a loud branch break behind me. It sounded like the noise came from where the trail that I had walked in on to get to my deer stand starts, which is roughly 25 yards behind my deer stand just off an old logging road. My stand is surrounded by trees and branches immediately behind me by design, so I had no way of turning around to try and see what caused this loud branch-breaking noise. As I sat in my stand listening, I thought I could hear something taking very slow steps, and the steps were very soft, like whatever it is was trying to mask the steps. I assumed I had a deer walking up the trail towards me and readied myself for when it appeared into view from my stand, which is roughly the 3 o'clock position to my right. I quietly turned my body ever so slightly to the right towards the path I believed this deer was on and switched my rifle to a left-handed shooting position. I didn't hear any more footsteps once I got resituated. As I waited for the deer to appear, I was going through all the normal deer hunting thoughts and feelings. Holy smokes, I hope it's a nice buck. I hope it's a clean shot. It sure is taking its sweet time. We're going to be eating backstraps tonight, etc., etc. And as I thought this, I wondered where it's coming from at this time of day. I saw it, off to my right at my 3 o'clock, right on the path I figured a deer would be walking on. There it was. It was not a deer. About 35 feet away from me and slowly walking right down the middle of the trail leading southeast away from my stand was a Sasquatch, and it was massive. In hindsight, I'm pretty sure it knew I was there, but it wasn't showing any concern and was just walking along. All I did was watch. After about 5 seconds, a car could be heard off in the distance coming towards the nearby highway, and the Sasquatch kind of lifted its head. We must have heard it at the same time, and then somewhat hurried up its gait and walked away over a slight ridge and then down into another bog. I never saw its face or the front of the Sasquatch due to the direction it walked away from me. I did get a really good look at the rear and its legs and its back. It was hairy, covered in brownish light black hair, very muscular. I couldn't believe how large the muscles were on its thighs and calves. It was about 20 seconds that I got to watch this amazing beast until it fully disappeared down into the bog. In those 20 seconds, it covered about 50 yards. Even though it had sped up a bit, it was still not in a hurry. Once it disappeared, I realized at some point while watching this massive creature walk by, I had switched my rifle back to my natural way of holding it, right-handed, put the safety back on, and had the barrel pointed away from where the Sasquatch had walked. Don't ask me when, I have no idea. The Sasquatch never meandered from the trail and it never looked around. It just focused on the direction it was headed. I sat there in my stand for about 45 minutes contemplating what I had just seen and with a feeling of complete peacefulness. I also believed the Sasquatch was watching me from the bog it had walked into during that time. That afternoon, I had planned to do some investigating, but as will happen in the north woods of Minnesota in November, the beautiful morning turned into rainy, crappy, cold afternoon, which then turned into 6 inches of snow that night and into Monday morning. I didn't get back into my deer stand until next spring. The Sasquatch was about 7.5 feet tall based on some measurements I took the next spring. The only evidence seen by me was the top of a 7-foot-high tree that was snapped as I was walking out to the logging trail from my stand. What I thought at the time that was the branch break that I initially heard. Thanks for watching until the end. I hope you guys enjoyed these 3 fascinating encounter stories. Now, before I go, if you guys get a chance to get out there and hike this weekend or the upcoming weekends, make sure to enjoy the fall colors because currently the leaves are all turning red and it is absolutely spectacular. A big shout out goes out to all of the current channel members. I want to thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. You guys are truly amazing. And if you're not a member yet, consider joining for exclusive perks and weekly members-only chats. And guys, don't forget to like, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell, and also hype this video to help it reach more fellow cryptid fans. Your support really makes a difference. And as always, if you have your own strange encounter, we'd love to hear it. Send it to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com and I'd love to feature it in a future episode. Have a great weekend ahead, enjoy the fall colors, stay safe, and I'll see you next time for more mysterious encounter stories from Ontario Cryptids.